Good afternoon. You guys got quiet quick. I'd like to thank you all for attending this luncheon today. I'm Brandy Seymour, the president and co-founder of Oklahoma Women in Technology, and I'm excited to be here hosting this event as part of OKWIT in partnership with the Women's Energy Network of Greater Oklahoma. You know, it's probably about a little less than a year ago, our two organizations were sitting together trying to identify what our goals were, and what we discovered is that we have goals that are very much aligned, and that's around empowering and supporting and advocating for women in their respective industries, be it energy or IT, and providing that leadership and kind of grooming younger women up into leadership positions. Not because we think it's what's right or we're just pro-women, period, but because we believe in diversity equaling higher profitability and productivity for companies. So it's better business. Diverse teams equals better business, and that's what we're fighting for. And I think that all of you probably share the same goals, or you wouldn't be here today, men and women alike. So thank you all for coming today. When we were trying to decide what topic we were going to cover, we decided one of them should be big data. I have a feeling that if I pulled 10 of you at a time to the side and said, tell me what big data is, I would get very different answers. And so we decided what better way to train our members of both organizations on what big data is, because this is a hot topic. Big data is like the buzzword that we keep hearing in all of our conversations, both in energy and in IT. And so we decided that we were going to bring experts in this field directly to you and provide that knowledge base on what big data is. So the goals are, when you walk away today, that you have a better understanding of what big data is, what does it mean for your companies, no matter what industry you're in, and what your role is in big data, and what your role can be in big data, and what opportunities are out there, again, both in energy and in IT. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the event planners for this event. A lot of work went into this, months of planning, and as you can see, I think it's turned out spectacular. So if we could have our event planners from both OKWIT and the Women's Energy Network stand up, please. Stay standing. And now at this time, if we could have our advisory board members of both organizations stand up. And at this time, if we could have our board members of both organizations stand up. Stay standing. And now if our chairholders from both organizations could stand up. And all of the many volunteers for both organizations, please stand up. All right, thank you all for everything. Without all of you, these organizations wouldn't be what they are today, and these are powerful organizations in the state of Oklahoma that are impacting our community and changing it for ways and more positive ways than we can even imagine. I wanted to let you know that I went on a trip just recently to India, and I was sharing them with them about these luncheons. While I was in India, the luncheon that Women's Energy Network and OKWIT did last month over cybersecurity was streamed live, and I was able to watch that while I was in India. And I was sharing this with the women of India as I came across them and had the opportunity to interact with them. And they are so amazed by what all of you are doing, and they are so intrigued by this. And I can't tell you how many conversations I had about how can I do this here in India. So those little pebbles make big ripples, which turn into huge waves. So thank you all for everything that you do. And of course, this event wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. So our elite sponsors are Dell EMC, Nimble Storage, and their partner UDT, and Pinnacle Business Systems. Our active sponsor for this event is Pure Storage Solutions. And our corporate sponsors are Devon Energy and Cox Business. And of course, I'd like to thank our event sponsor for hosting this in Tulsa today, because this event is being streamed live to Tulsa at Oklahoma State University. So they are helping us make this possible in Tulsa for members of both organizations there as well. So thank you all to our sponsors. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our moderator for this panel, Joretta Nord. And before I hand it over to Joretta, she's going to introduce herself and the panelist. But make note of what you have on your table. And I think I saw it up there earlier. But this is a site where you can go to submit your questions for the panelists. And this is about just general business questions. As much as it is about IT, it's also about if you're in a marketing department or the energy department, or if you're in advertising or just accounting, any department at all, submit your questions and to find out how big data impacts you, okay? And so again, this is on your table here. And once again, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Well, is it good afternoon? I think we're in the afternoon, aren't we? I'm, as Brandy said, I'm Joretta Nord. I'm a professor in the Spear School of Business at Oklahoma State University. My current research is on social technologies for business and how that can empower women. And I'm currently in 29 countries across 5 continents. So that's been an interesting study for me and the colleagues that are working with me. I served as Associate Dean in the Spear School of Business, and I also have been Executive Director of the Spear School Speakers Bureau and the Spear School Mentoring Program. I've spent time as a visiting scholar at UCLA and the University of Southern Queensland in Australia, and I also have served as a Fulbright Specialist Scholar in Slovenia. I'm currently executive editor of the Journal of Computer Information Systems, and I've published numerous articles because I'm been there so many years, I won't say old, and 6 books. So now we turn to our panel of experts, Megan Clifford, Rob Hembry, and Ben Williams. We'll ask you to come up, please. All right, we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and as they do this, we've asked them to give their response to the question, what is big data and why is it important? After they do this, we'll open it up to the audience for questions, and Brandy mentioned to you how to do that. So we have Ben, Megan, and Rob. So Ben, we'll start with you and let you introduce yourself.
All right, so hello, my name is Ben Williams. I'm really honored to be here, to be invited to speak to such an impassioned and empowered group of people. Just by the by, OKWIT and WEN are both very important organizations to Devon and to me personally in my leadership role at Devon. I'm the Chief Information Officer there and have had the honor of working with some amazing leaders in our organization on trying to encourage women to develop into leadership roles and to try to attract and retain our, I think, disproportionate share of women into technical roles in the energy industry, in particular in my organization, IT roles. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done. So just with that short preamble, I've been in the role of Chief Information Officer there at Devon for 8 years, which is like 4 lifetimes in that role. Any day now, I expect them to tell me they're done with me, but so far so good. It's been a great ride. I came through mostly oil and gas IT positions, but also worked with several other industries in consulting roles and in other professions. The big data topic is, I think big data is like any other sort of buzzword that gathers a lot of momentum in the world of technology. It's really driven by advances in information technology, core technologies, in my view, what we, as talk about businesses, had gotten used to for years and years, decades, was using essentially the information that people or interfaces entered into our systems, our applications. So your accounting data, GL accounts, transactions, some of your operational type data to really look at business performance. And a lot of that analysis was, I think at the time, a little bit more looking back and trying to draw conclusions on what we could do to drive better performance. The topic of big data really comes in because we're able to technically and affordably process a lot more different types of information. And so it allows for creative ideas like, well, maybe we could look outside of our company walls to collect information from sort of non-traditional sources, you know, huge websites which might be able to sell us information, for example, about customers. Or in the oil and gas industry, we go out and look at public data sources and start just gobbling up all kinds of data off of county websites or regulator websites or third-party websites that might offer information for a fee or for free, and start bringing that in and combining it with some of the information that we have to drive maybe more predictive analytics, things that we don't have the information about necessarily internally, but are able to kind of greedily collect the information that might help us find signals. So it's really a step change in technology that makes it very affordable to do that, and also some great software tools that make it very affordable to do that. And it really sets you up, I think big data really sets you up for creative problem solving, which ties back to what we heard from the opening remarks about, you know, diversity of thinking, diversity of approach really is the next opportunity there. How do we look at that huge information set in ways that are very diverse and try to find really creative ways to change and evolve our business? So I'm going to take a nap in this really comfy chair and let Megan take it from there.
Thanks, Ben. I'm Megan Clifford. I'm a data scientist at American Fidelity, a local insurance company. I work on a team there who works on several projects relating to big data, and artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Some examples of projects we're working on are building a predictive model for predicting fraud, and also building a chatbot right now. So it's really two very exciting projects. Before that, I was at the Harvard University's Graduate Schools for Education, Center for Education Policy Research. Wow, that's a really long name once I really got it out there. Okay, so I was at Harvard before, and I worked also as a data scientist there in the education sphere, building predictive models to help us better understand problems like what students might drop out from high school and trying to intervene at a time when we can still impact them. So for me, going to the definition of data science question, the biggest advantage I see in the data science, or in big data, so big data to me is high volume, high velocity, high variety data, which just really boils down to, it could be, you know, a bunch of text data coming in from Twitter that's unstructured. It could be very structured data coming from more traditional databases, and it's numbers and it's categories. But what's amazing to me is to be able to take all of these data and put it together to identify patterns and trends, and put these things together to generate insights that help us better understand our business, our world, and ourselves.
I don't know about you guys, but when I met Megan, I realized I'm really unqualified to talk about this. So really, I'm excited about the opportunity. Thank the teams for having us. It's been an outstanding experience thus far. My name's Rob Hembury. I lead our Operations Data Services group at Chesapeake. I've been there 10 years as of last week, 16 years in IT. I'm sitting in a different seat today. I'm actually in the business, which has been interesting around how some of those skills translate and how the technology is moving some of those things forward. I think going back, we've been going through I would say a digital transformation, and I've got some friendly faces in the audience that are going to keep me accountable today. But going back 5 years, we stood up a real-time streaming infrastructure and system at Chesapeake to watch all our rigs, steal our rigs. So it's a big part of had the opportunity to be a big part of that. And then we've been in a multi-year SAP implementation, which if any of you are familiar with something like that, it is a big lift. So survived, the team survived. Again, got the opportunity to be a part of that. And then we started to shift our focus to big data. And that was in 2014, and we evaluated a lot of partners. we went through the commodity crunch at the time, and if you're familiar with Chesapeake, we've been through some journeys, and I'm really proud of what that team has done. And we spent 16 or 15 laying out what is our strategy in this environment. What can we do? How can we innovate in a commodity constrained environment? And then in 16 was really show that, integrate that into the business, start to operationalize those. So in 17, we've spent the better part of the year really outlining what's our strategy for data at the company. And so that leads into the what and why data is important, I think, or not data, but big data itself. And I think it is a cultural change, at least for us. And I see it in both the independents and the majors, if you're in the E&P space, is just shifting focus to recognizing that data is an asset to an organization. And so what we're trying to do at Chesapeake is treat it as such, treat it as something that we acquire, that we develop and are trying to monetize just like anything else. And so what's happening is we're actually, because of big data and the capabilities associated, it's shifting our focus to what are the skills necessary in the business to really support that. And some of those things are migrating that have been traditionally out of IT, and some of those aren't technology, but what it's done is that culture of shifting towards and embracing that innovation are pointing to some of our sins of the past of not paying attention, not managing our data. So there's we're trying to be intentional about having a sound data management strategy. So looking forward to learning from the group and the audience.
Thank you. Great responses. We're very fortunate, I think, to have this panel of experts, and thanks to those who organized this for bringing these people together. The first question, and this is interesting to me in academia as well, is how do you see big data affecting skill sets that are needed by both employees and new hires? And what should we be doing in putting out new hires or in graduating or giving degrees to people, or not giving away, they earn it, right? I didn't say that. But, what should we be doing different to prepare students for what you need now as far as big data goes? And I'll start with you, Mr. Williams.
I actually had the pleasure of meeting with faculty in a number of different universities about this very topic. So in terms of the what should universities be doing, I think that the data-driven decision-making and automation, those themes, the way we generate information now so often is through different methods than just people sitting at a keyboard typing information into a system. There will be much more automation that occurs that creates the data for us, and the jobs then will be less about creating information and much more about what do I do with that information now that it's out there. So the roles, for example, in that traditional business schools have graduated people into are really undergoing probably the fastest change that they've ever undergone in the history of the industrial society. So accounting jobs are going to be changing very, very quickly as technologies like robotic process automation begin to subsume essentially certain types of tasks and really leave people to do much more analytical types of tasks. So tying back to big data, the amount of information, again, that we're going to need to develop skills to analyze, understand, develop patterns from, and then take action based on is going to grow, and certainly the tools that you get to use to do that are going to proliferate and be much more accessible. And so many times, for example, the conversations I've had with faculty has been, it's not enough to just have what a traditional accounting degree had in it before. You need to start teaching people a little bit about analyzing that information in a much larger sense, cross-functional analysis, to be able to do operational financial impact analysis. So if I make an operational change, what's the likely financial outcome that's going to come from that? Those sort of indirect and multi-factor type analysis, as opposed to just looking at, based on last month's activity, what do I think next month's cash flow is going to be? It's much more about, what are the indicators that are leading me to understand operational indicators that are then leading me to understand what my cash demand is going to be, and how do I then look beyond my company out into the industry and look at industry indicators for that that are much more predictive, say, than just the amount of information I have within the company. So that kind of second and third order thinking, the kind of ability to be intuitive about where then should I go to get that information, how do I bring it together and really analyze it differently, is I think going to grow. And much less, I think very often accountants, I know we certainly have been guilty of bringing accountants in and giving them a lot of very repetitive things to do. And I think our accounting organization is moving quickly towards that we're not going to give anybody that kind of repetitive stuff to do anymore. We're going to move right into higher order type work. So I think it's important to prepare even faculty for that kind of transformation that's going on. So I'll pass it on to anybody else who wants to add.
Yeah, I'll add on to Ben a little bit. So there's a lot of influence in this organization here, and I think the technology is one thing. There are a lot of roles that are needed in an organization to manage that data, and that can be through a steward, through a lot of things that aren't directly correlated to the technology itself. And there's opportunities there. There's more and more maturing of data management teams within an organization, more strategic thinking about how we prioritize and move in that direction. And you can also be using your influence to help change people's thinking around what is available, what opportunities do we have to look at this differently. And I think that's part of that culture is we may have always done it this way, but actually we could do it this way. So I think it's just an additional way to look at it.
And I think that I really believe that data science is a team sport. It takes a team. So to that end, we need architects, we need data scientists, but more so underpinning all of the different specific skills we need, I think we need critical thinkers who are excited about data and excited about being data-driven and sharing those insights.
Okay, thank you. None of you are small business, but there's a question here that I think some may be interested in, some others as well, besides the person who posted it, and it's, can small startups benefit from big data? Megan, you want to start out on that one?
Sure, well, I think absolutely. I mean, anybody can really benefit from big data, but for smaller companies too, I think a couple things. So one, we're at bigger companies, and I imagine you two can chime in on this, but when you've been dealing with several different inherited systems, it creates a big data mess. And one thing I would love about being a small startup is to just have a clean slate and start from scratch. So I think, in that sense, small startups have an advantage over us. Secondly, though, I also think that they have the unique position to leverage technologies and capabilities that might not otherwise be available to them, that, money-wise, trying to get the team to gather these insights can be really difficult. But there's all these great services that utilize that big data to bring the same insights that can be brought to the big players as the small businesses. And I think that that's really something to leverage for a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I would totally agree that I've got some friends that have moved on to other E&P startups, and they have a whole different optionality on services that they can leverage that are cloud, which is where we're going, where not just this industry, but IT technology is going. And so instead of having that legacy challenge that you're carrying around trying to solve the data and simplify your business, you do have, I think, a lot more flexibility in that realm.
Okay, great, thank you. This is a question that's going to vary depending on the company, but how big is big data? Are you in the petabytes or terabytes?
Devin manages multiple petabytes of information, and a lot of that information is pretty readily accessible from the analytical tools that we use. So it's not data islands anymore. It's not little pockets that are inaccessible. It's many petabytes of information.
Okay.
I elected to call a friend who's in the audience.
So raise your hand if you know what a petabyte is.
Yeah. We're in the P's, in the petabytes.
So a 2-hour HD movie is about 3 gigabytes. So 2,000 hours of high definition video. Your whole work year is 1,000 times that, which is a terabyte or 3 terabytes, and 1,000 times that. So now we're into 200,000 hours of HD video, which is like a lifetime. of HD video is a petabyte, is 3 petabytes, right? So that's, I think, roughly the math. So that's a lot. I had to do that math for my board of directors one time. So.
All right, thank you, Ben.
I'm pretty sure we're in the petabytes, but I think most relevant is just how much data you're using for any particular project, and then what tools you need and everything to analyze that project. And for me personally, I start defining it as big data as the minute it doesn't work on my computer, that it's going to break my computer when I run it. So when I'm handling a problem that I have to work in distributed systems, I may only be analyzing a small portion of American Fidelity's total data, but it doesn't work on my computer, so it's big.
I think another way to look at it too is some of our first successes weren't necessarily what I would call big data, but we were using big data tools and technologies and approaches around data science. So you can be successful with not necessarily the volume of data that you're trying to tackle.
Very good point. Thank you, Rob. A question here probably involves the soft skills. What methods have you used to gain buy-in with the business, and how do you deliver value without growing your IT department?
So, at American Fidelity, we've really taken a very organic approach. We have a strong citizen data science culture here. And so we really try to, we don't work with a centralized model, but we really try to develop a culture with the whole community. And we have 40 citizen data scientists. We call them data navigators. And so these are business experts in several of our different areas who work to develop dashboards within Click and work to interface and with the business and to develop data-driven insights to the business.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just to chime in a little bit, I mean, our really the role of the, I think the typical information technology organization is changing in a lot of ways. So typical information technology organization in the 80s and 90s spent a lot of time developing reports for people who wanted to get a report, right? And the modern information technology organization develops a platform for people to build reports, connects the platform to the information, and says, go to town, and gets out of the way. And that's not just about reporting, that's also about data analytics, it's also about process redesign, it's also about, right? So the role of an information technology organization, from being the programmers who did the stuff for you, they're now going to be, they need to be working towards, how do I create a platform that's intuitive, that's easy to use, so that me, the expert in my business, can actually do the process improvement, or can do the analytical work, or can do the machine learning myself, without having to be an expert in exactly how all the code is being developed behind the scenes. So that's, again, enabled by improvements in technology, and that's, for me, fundamentally how an IT organization can be a multiplier, can not grow in size and cost, but can really empower the organizations that run their business and know their business to improve their business and rethink their business in the most optimal way. So getting out of the way, frankly, is the role of most IT organizations now.
I think Ben used the term empower. I think it's a great word. That's been our approach, is to going out and hiring 10 data scientists, which wasn't an option for us the last couple of years. So we've had to identify what is that skill in our organization that we have today. We happen to have found some tremendous talent, and it's not for everybody, but what our approach is somewhat like American Fidelity, where we've identified that talent, brought them in, and we've created a center of excellence around our big data program with Brandon Brown and Mike Lebsack. And what they do is they really onboard that person for 3 months, teach them the tools, teach them the techniques, the best practices, and they send them back home to where they're now a SME in their own area. And so they start to build out those tools that are focused on the area that they know best. And that's been really successful for us, and it hasn't grown IT, which is in line with that same strategy, and it's enabled our business to be a culture changer, because they're telling people, showing people that the things that they can do, and just advancing us with solving bigger problems.
So it sounds like you use the mentoring approach somewhat.
Yes, to some degree, yeah.
Yeah. My question, just as a follow-up, is do you have formal training as the culture shifts? Or do you, like Ben said, get out of their way? or Rob said, have them associated with another person that knows more about it than they do. Do you have any other kind of or training that you do other than
Yeah,
that?
I have to defer to our guys that are here on what that formal training is. I know we have a curriculum that we've created. I think there's a lot of energy within Chesapeake trying to educate the broader community on what is big data, how can we use it, how does that different between what Kathy Tompkins' team does in IT, how's that different than what Rob's team does in the business. And there's a lot of energy there just to try to clarify how these teams work together, and we're focusing there. We get better.
Okay.
I think in terms of training, what we're seeing is more and more peer-to-peer training happening organically. I think AFA's got a similar story, so I won't jump all over that. But we have people who are stepping up who have a passion in this space, big data or in analytics, and running classes and inviting people to come and learn. And that's I think the best way internally, frankly, for people to learn. There are also many opportunities. In fact, OU, Texas A&M, and others have great programs for people to get more formal education in a couple of years or a year plus in how to do big data analytics type work in a much more structured and formal way. So I think as employers and employees, it's important to start thinking about when is a good time for somebody to go work that into their career development. And again, thinking about the WEN WIT mission here. That's something maybe some of you in the room might get excited and interested about, and I would encourage you to talk to somebody about pursuing that if it's an interest. You don't have to be an IT person to go do that, right? I mean, you just have to know your part of the business and be ready to think differently about the world of business, frankly. And I think those opportunities, are important for us as companies to think about the fact that we've hired and developed, thousands or hundreds or whatever number of people before all this stuff caught on. And the value those people have with just a little bit more formal training is way more powerful than having to redevelop somebody's knowledge of your organization, your industry, and everything else. So a lot of times I think investing in our existing people is the best way to go, well, almost all the time.
I think that training is a really integral part of big data and bringing business intelligence to a business, and often really an overlooked one. We think about getting the tools like Tableau or ClickSense, but we often don't think about the commensurate training that has to go into buying one of those tools for it to be successful. And so at American Fidelity, I think we really were successful in this area. So our training has really a three-pronged approach. One is a formal training, so that we actually have specific classes that are in classroom, or you can do an online-based option. That particularly helps our remote employees, so it helps us reach all of our employees. But we do have these classes. They're on topics such as how to build data visualization models, how to build visualizations, and how to interact with the tool. So we have those about once a month, and they've an amazing tool for people to really advance their skills. Secondly, we also offer several project-based learning opportunities. So when we first started our Click implementation, our Click rollout, so that's the tool that we have for data visualization, one thing we did is we brought those 40 navigators together that I mentioned, and we split them up into teams of 5. And each team had about 3 or 4 topics that they were responsible for implementing visualizations for. And so that was just huge because we ended up rolling out our tool with about 35 functioning applications. And when I talk to other people in their rollouts, they might only have 6 or so after a year that they're struggling to get people to use. So we really took the approach of building and empowering people to use the tools for problems that they thought were pertinent, and to use the knowledge that they had to develop those visualizations. And then the third one is the mentoring program. So our data navigators, we do have everybody who's interested in learning more about business intelligence and big data, American Fidelity. Anybody can get a mentor, and so that one of the data navigators will actually work with them to develop their first data visualization or other form of data project.
That's good stuff. I think I want to build on that, because one of the things as leaders, as we're maturing these things, we've got to give people a clear line of sight for their career path. And so what it's doing is it's forcing some conversations with our HR business partners of how do we give them, whether it's a data engineer, whether it's a data scientist, whether it's like, what is that maturity path for them, so they can see, if I go get some advanced training, how do I come back and what's my career path? So I think it's forcing some conversations on how do we better give people line of sight. And that's a
Great.
work in progress for sure.
Okay, thank you. Those were great answers. Here's a question that's going to probably interest almost everyone in this audience, and it's, what are you doing, what are each of you doing within your companies, or what are your companies doing to empower female leaders? Megan, you want to start that one?
Sure. So, well, I mean,
We'll let
one,
them
I'm
think about
proud
it.
of American Fidelity to begin with. We have a large group of female colleagues, but also for female leaders. Diana Biddle is here right now, who's actually been instrumental in growing me in my career, and I just feel that there's a lot of strong female leadership support for other females. Also, we have the Women in Technology local chapter at our organization, and so that team has really grown a lot over the past year, and it has several different parts of, or several different charges. And one of them is to develop training and programs and options to help grow women in their careers. We found at American Fidelity that there were a lot of women really interested in growing their technical careers, but they didn't necessarily know where to start in those pathways. And so we thought, it would be a great opportunity to start developing workshops and developing mentorship programs, to having speakers come in and do all sorts of things to help give women more insights on how they can grow themselves. And also, American Fidelity does support tuition reimbursement that women within our Women in Technology group and within the whole company have been taking advantage of to grow themselves in their technical careers.
Hi up. Okay. I'm really proud of Chesapeake. We've changed a lot, and one of the ways that we've done that is embraced a culture of diversity and diversity of thought, diversity of our leadership. And so that is a corporate-wide program that Kathy chairs, Kathy Tompkins. I think our representation with Tavia and team here directly on Women in Energy, I think is a commitment to that. You can go to our front page of our webpage, and it's advertised in this event today. So I think there's really strong support throughout both our cultural programs and then just the expectations at Chesapeake that we are looking and giving those opportunities.
So at Devon, I mean, diversity, inclusion, and diversity of thought has been a pretty core I think, concept and communication vehicle for our CEO for a little while. Diversity of thought's been important to Dave Hager for years, and really something that he's brought a much greater focus to. Even before his role as CEO, though, we have had women development programs in place. Actually, there's a table in the middle of the room that I'm probably not going to do justice to all the things that are happening, but who could speak better to this than I can. But focusing on developing women leadership from technical roles into leadership roles has been an active process through developing a career a mentorship process, as well as a peer network. I think more recently, probably two big things have gotten a lot of momentum. At Devon, one of them fundamentally is we're actually formalizing a diversity and inclusion program, and there'll be more to come around that, and really going to, I think, make a bolder move in this direction. Certainly, gender diversity and inclusiveness around gender diversity is going to be a big part of that program, and I'm really glad to be right in the middle of forming that. And again, some of the people here in the room with us today are right in the middle of that with me. The other thing we've done is, and really has taken hold and has been very impactful to me, I think, as well as to some of the women in the organization, is we formed quite a few Lean In circles. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the Lean In book, but we have multiple active Lean In circles. I participate in one, and will soon be participating in another one as a guest. And that conversation, I think, has been incredibly impactful, I think, to a very groundswell movement in furthering, I think, the momentum around awareness of the importance of inclusion, the real impact of inclusive thinking and working in our organization. I think it's one of the catalysts, frankly, that's led to, as well as others, certainly the good business aspect of this has always been there, but it's one of the catalysts, I think, that's led to us formalizing diversity and inclusion program for the organization in a much more meaningful way. So a lot more to come. Again, I'm not doing justice to the number of things that are going on already, but I'm really excited about the things that are going to be coming in the very near future.
Thank you. And I might just add, all of you here are doing the right thing. You're connecting with other women who are empowered. And another thing that I would tell you after spending many years in technology and seeing it go from, being the only woman in the department to other, even students in class, where that's increased about in the 90s and then it decreased again. I think it's a great area to be in right now, and you have to expect more of yourself. I mean, expect more. So, that's what I would say is don't doubt yourself, and just know all of you are in the right place, and I think those of you that are here are those women that we need to help empower others. So, all right, thank you. A question here is, what is the end goal for big data acquisition for the energy industry? So I guess this would go to our energy people.
What was the question again?
What's the end goal for the big data acquisition for the energy industry?
Our end goal is to make money for our shareholders.
It's the bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
I think Doug would be proud of me for that answer. Drilled in. I think the end goal, I think, is for us to really transform. We're trying to actually digitally transform at Chesapeake. I think that a successful E&P company of the future is a technology company in some way. If we aren't embracing and getting on board, we're going to be left behind. I mean, and so I feel like the more that we push that trajectory out 2-3 years, the more successful we're going to be. And I think for us, we've had some changes in leadership and how we've approached that, and I think it's helped enable that mindset that's pushing others to think in different ways. So I think it's that culture of innovation that Ben was speaking to. And the end game is to make better decisions, be a top quartile performer, and represent Oklahoma City.
Okay, great.
I mean, for Devin, I don't know, I'm going to speak way out of turn here. I think for Devin, it's to figure out how to make big data old news, right? So big data is new news right now, but 5 years ago we were trying to implement a data warehouse, or a visualization or a dashboard. That was hard work, and now big data is hard work. And all the things, the great questions that we've been talking about, the concepts that we're discussing today around data, using data to drive decisions and improving that, that's feels like a challenging cultural change that American business is going through, to trust the information that you get from an analytical model and use that to inform expert decision makers. That feels like you're taking away my expertness and replacing it with an algorithm. The challenge now is culturally is to figure out how you're expert in more things than just looking at data, bits and bytes. Your expertise is much bigger than that. So don't hold yourself back. Don't think about what you're losing. Think about what opportunities that's going to free up for you to then be much more creative, much more right-brained to some degree in the way that you think about the business world, such that this isn't such a big change anymore. And now we're looking at, well, how do I really build on that into the next thing, which, I don't know what that's going to be exactly. It's going to be something, that I haven't thought of yet today sitting here in this room, just like big data and artificial intelligence wasn't something I was thinking about when my biggest problem was how to create a data warehouse for our financial information. So, never stopping and thinking about that this journey is fast-paced, it's challenging, but it's fun and interesting if you choose to let it be, and figure out how you can work yourself out of your current job and into the new job is the challenge, I think, for all of us. It doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you're in IT or you're in the front office in marketing and sales, or whether you're in an operational role, your work's going to change. And that's the magic of this amazingly affordable and accessible technology. And so don't fixate on one step in that journey. Think about the journey and about how you want to be an active participant in shaping the journey for yourself and your peers. Don't let it happen to you.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. I think success looks like we're shifting from monitoring and reporting to analyzing and assessing. So we're moving towards higher value work. In order to do that, you've got to embrace that, man, what I do today, there may be something more important than we could be doing.
So much truth to that. I think, you know, and there's always that next thing, isn't there, in technology. But like Ben mentioned, that's what makes it exciting for us. That's what makes our jobs secure. And, you know, it's always changing. We don't get bored. All right, Megan, this is a question for you. What is your definition of a data scientist?
All right, well, that's a hard one.
I'm interested in this one.
Just look at her, right?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question for me. I read an article it was talking about how right now we have data scientists, and there are these supposed unicorn people who are supposed to do everything. Well, I don't do everything. There's so much that I just don't understand about some things that other data scientists do. Why? Well, because it's a really, really large field. And when I talk to different data scientist friends of mine, our jobs vary so much. And I think that, I read this article, it was talking about how data scientists really will evolve to be a team sport in the long term, that you're going to have some people who specialize on the statistics side and the math side and know enough about programming to be able to function and use the big data, utilize distributed computing to analyze large data sets. That's where I am. I came from math and stats. That's my background. But then I also have colleagues and friends in the community who came from the IT side and learned enough about stats and analytics to not mess things up. And so I really see a point where, the field is getting such a high demand. The skill sets are becoming more and more varied as we're expected to learn about natural language processing and machine learning and various applications of AI. And it's really hard for one person to be an expert in all of this. So I guess the bottom line is a data scientist can really mean many things right now, really anything to do with analytics, AI, et cetera. But in the future, I think we'll see more teams develop with specialists who are in architecture and in machine learning and in NLP and things like that.
Okay, thank you. This question, I think all three of you could probably have something to add. Technology is always changing. How do you stay current in the different areas of big data? You've somewhat addressed that already, right? I took too much Mucinex this morning, I think. Asking you the same thing over.
So just to pile on a little bit, I actually get asked that a lot because the world of IT changes a lot, changes every day, and I get unfortunately or fortunately to do things related to data and analytics as well as every other function, the cybersecurity, and probably every other topic that's on the agenda for this technology-focused agenda. I think that the theme is never ignore a potential source of information. Never look away from a potential source of learning for you. I learn something in every silly meeting that I go to every day just by paying attention to what people are saying and how they're saying it. I learn, just was handed a book. I'm going to read the book. I'm going to learn from that. There are untold numbers of sources of information that you can plug yourself into. I think that the biggest thing is if you feel like you have a gap in data analytics and you want to understand that, or big data and data analytics, find somebody like Megan to go reach out to and ask a few questions in your own company. And if you don't have somebody like that in your own company, I guarantee you there's somebody here in this room who can answer 10 or 15 or 20 questions that you might have and help you connect this topic back to something that you have passion about. And I think when you make that connection, that's when the learning really unfolds, right? That's when you really get excited about it and you really start thinking about, what does this mean to me, or what does this mean to my area of interest or my area of expertise? So to me, I don't know that there's one way to learn. I'm an audio learner or whatever. When people say things to me, I remember them. But my wife's not. She's a doctor, so she's had to memorize way more information than I have. But if she can't read it, then it's not really much good to her. So I think just look at how you learn and go find people that you can learn from in that way.
Okay, since we're getting a little short on time, we've still got about 10 minutes, but there are a lot of great questions here, and maybe you can combine these two. This one is, what are some of the biggest problems, questions, or challenges that big data has helped you solve? It's a tough
all right,
one.
so I'll tell you two from Devin. One of them, I don't know how big data it is, but going back to the gender diversity problem, challenge, opportunity, however you want to frame it. In information technology, in Devon, our applicant pool is disproportionately low on women. We actually do an okay job. So the data tells me we do a pretty good job of hiring about the same proportion of women who apply for those jobs and moving them through the organization in about the same proportion, which causes me to think that our problem isn't so much an internal problem. Maybe it is, and there's probably lots of opportunity for us to get better at that. But we have a serious problem with the supply, with the workforce supply of technology-oriented women. And so that, to me, is a great insight, and it's really shaped my thinking about the dual responsibility that I have in my role, specifically with respect to diversity and the performance gains that we can get from having a more diverse workforce. Certainly need to continue to focus and improve our development of women leaders in the organization, and also need to focus on what should and can Devon or Devon employees do to improve the supply of technology-interested women. So that's just one for me that I'll share.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. These questions skip around on here, so I have to find it again. I think it was, what's your biggest challenge or problem that you've solved? What is the biggest challenge or problem that you've solved using big data?
Okay, well, I guess I was thinking about it a little bit differently, because you were thinking about our workforce and big data within your organization. I was thinking about specific problems. Maybe that's from being a data scientist and working on the projects itself all the time. So one interesting problem that we had was we want to understand our customers better, because how can we better serve them, and how can we sell them the right products that are going to fit their needs if we understand them in a very naive, one-dimensional way. We had looked at statistics about what our average customer age is, or what % are female and male, and we knew those type of things. But I mean, the problem of selling to the average is you sell to nobody. And so we started trying to use data scientists to better understand our customers as multifaceted groups, and eventually we hope to understand them better as individuals. But as a first step, we were able to make a great customer segmentation model, and we have our customers grouped into 13 different segments, like our urban, high-earning millennials, and our rural boomers, and things like that. And that's really been super helpful for us to understand people that are a whole mix of traits versus just one or the other. And it's helped us really get some key insights about our products that we didn't have before, that are going to really shape our marketing and sales efforts.
Okay, I'm going to take a different approach. So the guys met with the team yesterday, and they gave me 10 pages of all the successes we've had. I'm not going to pick one or two, because I'm going to get in trouble if I'm going to pick the wrong ones, but we'll be over here and you can come talk to us. But I will tell you, one of the biggest challenges that we face as leaders is retaining the talent, is retaining people like Megan. And so we've had to open our minds. So the E&P industry is very, traditionally has been very, hey, this is ours, we don't need you looking at it, and a lot of IP concerns. And we've had to open our thoughts to our big data engineers, our data scientists, because the open source community is a big driver for them, so they can get recognition outside of Chesapeake from their peers, by taking their intellectual knowledge of the things that we're working on and sharing that. Now, they're not sharing IP, but it's an example of where it's forcing us to rethink, do we want to take a hard line here, or do we want to keep these talented people, and what's the risk associated with it? So I think to get the right people on the bus is monumental in this space, and we've got to keep them. And that's something we spend a lot of energy on, is like, what is that career path clarity? what are those opportunities that aren't data science that people can anchor to around that can feed or leverage or be an ambassador. There's a lot you can do associated with big data that's not necessarily the guy or girl or woman who's behind the door and you're sliding some requirements to. There's so much impact on the organization that you can play, everybody in this room and your peers. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have, is to stay up front of that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask a question that for just one of you to answer, and then I have a final question. The question that has come up in different ways is, do you feel comfortable storing your data in the cloud as opposed to on your own servers, especially in light of the recent Equifax hack? Ben, you want to take that one?
Yes, we're all in on the cloud. I mean, I don't know how to say that much more efficiently. So quite simply, yes, digital security is an issue, but to think that I'm going to be better at it than Microsoft or Google or Amazon is hubris. They spend billions of dollars on digital security. I have a team of 20 really smart guys doing the best they can. You know, it's just a farce. So actually, the leakiest door into the cloud is probably through your corporate security. Right through the front door, using probably one of your or my credentials.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Thank
agree
you.
more with Ben's comments.
Thank you.
And by the way, we're both proud owners of really beautiful data centers.
All right.
Buying new hardware for those is not part of the strategy.
All right, thank you. Here's the final question. There is so much data around us. Where do you know, how do you know where to start? When do you know to start? How do you differentiate? This is a few questions, isn't it? How do you differentiate between creating a story with the data versus correlation does not mean causation? So let's start with, how do you know when to start and where to start?
It's a lot of information to process. Well, we really start with the business need, right? We don't really look at all the data and look at all those zeros and ones and just try to find the magic bullet in that. We really focus on what is a business need, and then we look to the data to say what of these business needs, which questions can we actually answer and then impact, right? So there's 3 prongs here. You need to have the business need, you need to have the data, and you need to know that if you even found an answer, that you would be able to implement that answer and be impactful. That's where we start.
Great answer. Thank you, Megan. All right. Anyone else want to address that one, or should we go to the latter half of... Ben, I see you have an answer for that. No, go ahead.
Start with the business problem. It has
Yeah.
to be, I mean, for any company, there has to be a business case for the work that you do. Again, just to build on that, though, there are sort of 2 types of continuous improvement or innovation, right? One is, I know the problem I'm trying to solve, and I'm going to go get it. And the other is, let's give some people some free time to explore and see what they can figure out. So, you know, each company has to figure out what proportion of your work are you going to focus on what type of effort. And I think initially, you're probably not going to focus a lot on the explore, you know, shots in the dark kind of approach, the high risk, potentially high return. You're going to have more of the, let's focus on a business problem. The open innovation side of things, you know, starts to creep in once you start to get some interested and passionate people who have some skills and a big idea maybe, or aren't really quite sure, and they start doing some exploration. So both, I think, are valid, but probably depending on where you are in your life cycle with big data and analytics, you're going to focus probably proportionately more on the I know what problem I'm trying to solve side of things.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the audience for your questions. Thank you to the panelists for your expertise and those great answers. And panelists will be available, am I right on that, for about 30 minutes for a question and answer. So if you want to come up and meet them and ask any more questions, or just meet them and see if they'll hire you, or whatever the case may be, feel free to do that. And let's go ahead and give our panelists a hand. Thank you.
step there.
I know it is, isn't it? That was very interesting. Thank you.
That's great. Y'all, everybody